Is Tylor Megill suddenly awesome? I'll break it all down on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use the code all in lowercase Locked On MLB for first deposit match up to $100. So far, Tylor Megill has been amazing in spring training. And another great outing on Tuesday where he went 3 scoreless against the New York Yankees. I will note this was not a New York Yankees lineup led by Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. It was one led by Anthony Volpe and Trent Grisham. So not nearly the opening day starting lineup, I would say, for the New York Yankees. They got sort of the young kids that were willing to travel, but it was still a good outing from Megill nonetheless. In the first inning, he did walk Volpe, who stole second, advanced to third on an errant throw from Francisco Alvarez, but Megill had to find his way out of the jam, and he did. Got a couple of strikeouts, worked around the traffic. Same thing happened in the second inning. Leadoff guy got on. Splitter got away from Megill. He hit a batter. That batter stole second, but he struck out the following 3 guys to get out of that jam. Then in the third inning, he struck out the leadoff man. Then he walked Volpe again, got a couple ground balls, and once again got out of a jam with a runner on base. All told, 3 innings pitched, 2 walks, 1 hit batsman, no hits allowed though, and 6 strikeouts. On spring, up to this point, Tylor Megill has 8 innings pitched, 13 strikeouts, just 2 walks. He's allowed only 1 run and only 4 hits. Now, I've seen everyone say it. Tylor Megill has been great in spring training before. That is the common phrase right now to explain away what has been a really good start to camp for Megill. Just say, oh, it doesn't mean anything. It's the Grapefruit League. And a lot of times I do follow that same narrative. Let's not, look too much into spring training stats. If Francisco Lindor is hitting 250 in spring training, I just don't care. But I will say that what Megill is doing this spring, he has never done that before. That is not a fair characterization of what's going on now and what happened previously. 2021 was his first spring training, but not a full one. I mean, he had 2 outs that he recorded. Okay, so 2022, this was after his rookie season. That's the first time where he entered camp as a big leaguer. Only pitched in 2 games that year, though. Did not allow a run. It was in 6 2/3 innings pitched. Walked 5, struck out 7. Good performance, but really small sample size. He's already pitched more this spring than he did in 2022. Last year was his first real full start to finish spring training where he got all of his work in, right? So in 2023, Tylor Megill went out and he pitched 17 innings, allowed 14 hits, 10 runs, although only 7 of them were earned. 13 walks, 12 strikeouts. That's an ERA in the 3.7s. Again, he walked 1 more batter than he struck out. Not anywhere near what he's doing right now, where, again, I remind you, 8 innings pitched, 13 strikeouts, 2 walks, 1 earned run. This is far better than anything he's put forth throughout his career. Last year, his whip was 1.59. This year, it's 0.75. Batters are hitting nearly 100 points less this year against them than they did last year. His ground ball to fly ball ratio is 4-1 this year compared to 2-1 last year. Small sample sizes, of course, these stats are ultimately meaningless. At the end of the day, no one's going to care what Tylor Megill did in spring training 2024. But we can't discount it entirely because he is attacking the zone in a way that we really haven't seen in his big league career. He's racking up strikeouts in a way that we haven't seen from him in a long time. And for a guy last year who saw the walk rates balloon and the strikeout rates plummet, this is showing that his stuff is playing. Now, who it's playing against obviously is a big factor in all this. As I already mentioned, he didn't face Juan Soto today. If he faced Juan Soto and struck him out twice, I would actually be puffing my chest out a little bit more about this notion that Tylor Megill can be something better than we ever could have expected. I'm not going to go that far. But coming into this season, I would have said if Tylor Megill's in your starting rotation for the full year, that's a problem. Or coming into this offseason, I should say. I would have said go out and add 3 great starters and bump them down the line. And they have added 3 starters, but Kodai Senga went down, and here Megill is once again getting an opportunity to be in the starting rotation come opening day. But this time I think he's ready to run with it. And there's a couple things that he's doing now that we'll get into more in the next segment when it comes to his pitch mix that I really do believe is going to help him take this spring training success and translate it to a big league season. But overall, it's how he has gone about his business so far this spring. It's the way he has been able to limit those walks, the way the strikeouts are piling up, and just the shape that he looks like he's in right now. The fact that he seems to be in midseason form already, that's a really good sign. Now I have to couch everything I just said because last year I was made to look stupid by David Peterson. Now I still believe in David Peterson as a pitcher, but I said some outlandish things a year ago. I said David Peterson could be a 3 on a really good team, a number 3 starter. I don't remember what I predicted his ERA would be, but I'm sure it was less than 4. I probably would have even said less than 3.5. I was ridiculously high on David Peterson. And I had reason to be. Because in 2022, the pitch data looked great. The advanced metrics were out there. He was striking out a ton of batters. He had this incredible slider. I thought, man, David Peterson is going to break out in a big way. I remember Jose Quintana going down, and I was like, who cares? The Mets got David Peterson. Well, last year, spring training led me to double down on what I thought Peterson would be because he pitched 12 scoreless innings and allowed just 1 hit, struck out 13, 8 walks. He was great. Then we all watched his regular season. We can't get too carried away and now say, Tylor Megill could be a number 2 in the Mets rotation for this entire season and moving forward. And all of a sudden they have another frontline guy because he's got the 1.13 ERA in spring. That's not what I'm trying to articulate on this show today. But I think that he can compete against big league hitters and be above average. That's what I think. I in the past would say ceiling for Megill is a 5th starter and a swingman. Now I'm saying, you know what? He could be a really good 4. He could be a solid 3. He can go into this season and pitch to a 3.8 ERA and give the Mets 160 to 180 innings. That's what I'm saying. And look, that is extremely valuable. So I want to explain why I believe he can do that. What I'm seeing right now that makes me actually buy into the spring numbers a little bit. So we'll go through it all in just a minute. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Testing your skills on Prize Picks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps. They have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, which is what makes Prize Picks the number 1 daily fantasy sports app because it's daily fantasy sports made easy, where you pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. During the season, you could pick more on a player's hits, their home runs in a game, someone's strikeouts. You combine them all. That's how you win big. And also, if you're looking at MLB stats right now, you can go for the season stats. So you find the MLB season tab. That's MLB SZN. You can find stats like Pete Alonso's RBIs at 108.5, Matt Olson 109.5, Juan Soto at 103.5. If you believe all 3 of those guys are going to be some of the best run producers in the game, take more on all of them. Combine that, you can win big. If you download the app today, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that is LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Download the Prize Picks app today. All right, so why do I think that Tylor Megill's spring training success is going to translate into the regular season? Obviously, I already alluded to the strikeout and walk rates. That's a big sign, right? What this guy's doing on the mound, the way he's attacking, that's awesome. But I also have been looking into what limited pitch data we get in spring training because look, these ballparks are nowhere near as outfitted with the technology that you'll see in a major league ballpark. But Clover Park does categorize pitches. So you can see what a guy is throwing. You can see whiff rates, all of that good stuff. And the second most used pitch for Megill so far this spring training has been his cutter. Now, his cutter has not been something he has thrown much throughout his career. We saw it a bit in 2022, but for the most part, he has been fastball, slider, changeup with the occasional curveball. The addition of a cutter, as well as that splitter that is getting all of the headlines because it's got the nickname the American Spork, and he's learned it from Kodai Senga. Of course, that's going to get the attention and the buzz, but he's throwing this cutter a lot. And to me, what the cutter and the splitter are going to do from this year, it's going to help him get guys off of his fastball. I don't know if you ever heard of pronation versus supination, but I actually got a baseball here. And fittingly enough, if you're watching on YouTube, it was signed by like a million dudes at spring training when I was a kid. I'm pretty sure one of these autographs might be a David Wright. It's too bad that I let other people sign a ball that David Wright signed and I didn't get it authenticated. Regardless, pronation versus supination, right? Basically, let me get the ball on camera here. The easy way to think about it is pronation's your fastball pitches. It's where the thumb is pointing down. Supination, thumb's going to be pointed up when you're throwing a slider or a curveball. By having multiple pronation pitches for a guy like Tylor Megill, who's going to throw his fastball a ton, by having a splitter, which you're talking about a wider grip, but it's a pronation pitch. Cutter, which is somewhere between the two, but it is still more pronation than supination. What this is going to do for Tylor Megill is it's going to give, for one, more offerings where a batter in the box has to make a decision. They're not just sitting on a 3-pitch mix. They're not just sitting, okay, he might dump in a curveball, but I can just erase that from my mind because he's rarely going to throw it and he's not going to throw it in the zone much anyway. They know the fastball is going to come at least 60% of the time. So they can just sort of key on the fastball and adjust when a slider comes or a changeup comes. Now you got a splitter. Now you got a cutter. You got a very mix of speeds because he still has his slider and his changeup he can go to. So he can mix speeds, he can mix locations. And if a guy is looking at his hands and he thinks a fastball is coming, and all of a sudden it's a split that's 10 miles per hour slower and is dropping off the table, they're going to swing right through it. If they're thinking, oh, maybe this is a slider coming, but it's coming in hotter because it's a cutter, or they're thinking that a fastball is coming and it's got that cut to it, all of a sudden he's able to toy with batters more. And most importantly, when he does throw his fastball, guys aren't expecting it as much because last year, Tylor Megill's fastball got hit very hard. Batters hit 314 against him and they slugged 494 against him. So they were able to identify that pitch and tee off. Now, if he's able to use the cutter, the splitter, still have, of course, his changeup and his slider, but to have a 5-pitch mix potentially, different options he can go to, especially for stretch of the season. Maybe there's some times where he's throwing the splitter a ton, other times where he abandons it for a couple of starts because guys start keying into that. I just think he has more options at his disposal now, and he really is coming into his own when it comes to his maturity as a pitcher. He's 28 years old. He's got over 250 innings in the big leagues under his belt now, and it's clear he's put the work in. So we'll see how it translates, but I'll tell you, last year, you look at the stats, and the first half, awful, right? ERA 5.17. His walks and his strikeouts were a pretty clear indication of when he was going good, when he was going bad. In the first half, he walked 12% of the batters he faced, struck out less than 18%. In the second half, he got that strikeout rate almost back up to 20%. Walk rate, he slashed it down to 8%. And the ERA was cut by a run just from doing that. His ERA in the second half was 4.09. In his first 2 seasons, that strikeout rate was about 25%, even over that, I think, in his first year, if I'm not mistaken. The point is, there is definitely more strikeouts on the table for Megill when he's right, and we're seeing it in spring. He's right. He's striking out a lot of batters. if he's not having those insane walk rates, where his walks get over 10%, he gets those walk rates down to 6%. All of a sudden, he's not putting those free passes out there. He's not leaving guys on the base, or hopefully he is leaving guys on the bases, but he's not starting the inning with more guys on base than he needs to, having to pitch himself out of more jams. If he does have the strikeout stuff, he can, though, more effectively work out of those jams. And I just think we're going to see a much better season from Megill. I don't think that his stuff overall is good enough that he's not going to get hit hard on occasion. When he goes up against a really good lineup, if he's facing the real New York Yankees in the season, Juan Soto and Aaron Judge can still tag Tylor Megill. I'm not going to say he's all of a sudden averse to some blow-up starts. But I think you're going to see some more consistency out of Megill. I think he's going to be able to keep, especially the bad teams, off of his fastball, and have some really good starts in those games. And look, when you're a 500 baseball team, which I think the Mets more or less are right now, I think that they can outperform and be better. But a big way you do that is you win the games against the sub 500 teams. You win the games against the Nationals, the Marlins this year. That's the time where you really need to show up. And I think Megill can have some really great outings against those teams. I think he can hold his own against some good lineups and put up some good starts there too. But I just think if you're looking at this rotation right now, because of where Megill is at in his career, because of coming off a season where he made 31 starts altogether between the big leagues and AAA, I think his arm's stretched out. He's healthy. He's ready to go. And there is a world where Tylor Megill is, top 3 on this team when it comes to wins above replacement for pitchers, because he could eat up that many innings and have a sub 4 ERA. Like I said in the last segment, I'm not saying the guy is going to win a Cy Young or be an all-star, but can he pitch to a 3.8 or a 3.7, or hey, even if things are really rolling, and pitch to a 3.5 ERA and give you a ton of innings? I think we could finally see that from Tylor Megill. And I'm excited to see him, take this augmented arsenal, bring it into a full season, and hopefully, not mirror the exact results he's gotten in spring, but be able to put it all together and avoid those terrible months where his ERA is over 6 and he's just, an automatic loss when he goes out there, but instead be a guy that throws more quality starts than not and keeps his team in games. So we'll see if it all can come together for Megill this year, but I'm very encouraged with these early results in spring. Anyway, in the next segment, I will go through some more notes I took from today's spring training game. Before we get to that, though, today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience are what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your car or truck, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. As we gear up for the regular season, if you are an everyday listener to this show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service. We get updates from me anytime some news breaks on the Mets or generally around the league. Today, I was sending out some texts about the Lucas Giolito, Tommy John surgery, or potential, I should say, Tommy John surgery. Mets might have dodged a bullet there. So talked about Justin Verlander and him missing the start of the season. So it's a place to go for extra bonus content. It's also where you can ask me questions anytime through text, and it's where we'll be sending out our lineups each day throughout the season. So if you want to know the Mets starting 9, you'll get a graphic texted directly to your phone. If you want to be part of this bonus level of coverage for Locked On Mets here, go to the episode description, click on the link, or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, some other notes that we had from spring training today. For one, I'll say there's a lot of good just content out there. If you go to the Foul Territory podcast, they had who was it? Pete Alonso on the show for an interview. Francisco Lindor, Harrison Bader, Sean Manaea, Francisco Alvarez, and Jose Quintana. So you see 6 players talking with former players. It was a good show to watch. And you also saw during the game, Lindor came on the mic for ESPN. Pete Alonso and Harrison Bader did. So a lot of Mets talking today. So that was exciting. As far as the game, Drew Smith pitched a clean inning. That was good to see. Phil Bickford did not. Gave up 4 hits and 3 runs. Hot take, or maybe not one. I think Phil Bickford, after winning his arbitration case against the Mets, is going to get DFA'd. I think that might happen. We'll see. I could be wrong, but just have a feeling that that's going to end up not working out because there's other guys throwing the ball better in camp. One of them is Sean Reed-Foley. Man, I remember when I bought into Sean Reed-Foley the first time. What was that? 2021, the first time we saw him. Throw the ball well, though. Struck out the side in his inning today. 3 scoreless innings so far. Has not allowed a hit. Walked just 1, 6 strikeouts. So definitely look out for Sean Reed-Foley to continue to make a push to make the team. Another guy that's done the ball well is Austin Adams. Another scoreless inning, 2 strikeouts, 1 walk. Now is up to 3 innings pitched, 1 hit allowed, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts for Adams. Chad Smith made his first appearance of spring. Gave up a run, did not make it through the inning. Yohan Ramirez picked up the save, scoreless 9th. He's up to 3 innings pitched, 2 strikeouts, no walks, 3 hits allowed. So another name to watch here. We'll continue to monitor how this bullpen's going to shake out throughout spring. Could be any of these guys, Ramirez and Adams and SRF. All those guys could potentially find their way into the pen, or it could be the 6 guys that we sort of expect, which, of course, Edwin Diaz, Adam Ottavino, Brooks Raley, Jake Diekman, Drew Smith, Jorge Lopez, plus Shintaro Fujinami and Michael Tonkin. And that's basically just it. All these guys end up in Syracuse, DFA'd, whatever it ends up being based on their roster status. Pete Alonso is crushing baseballs per usual. 5 for 13 in spring. I think that's a batting average over 380. But of those 5 hits, 4 have been doubles, 1's been a home run. So everything he's hitting is very hard. Francisco Lindor had an RBI double today. Brett Beatty went 1 for 2 with an RBI single, a run scored, and a walk. Mark Vientos, an 0 for 3 day with a strikeout, but I will say hit the ball over 95 miles per hour twice. One of them actually over 100 miles per hour. So in those 2 times where he put bat on ball, he did hit it very hard for whatever that's worth. Jeff McNeil still has not gotten on the field for a spring training game, but doesn't seem like they're going to put him through an MRI tube for that elbow. Of course, he has a partially torn UCL in his non-throwing arm, and he was exhibiting some soreness in that arm so far in camp. But for now, seems like everything is on track for McNeil. Opening day is yet to be in jeopardy. He might not get a ton of at-bats this spring, but I think Jeff's the type of hitter where they're just going to trust that he's going to be able to figure it out in season. He's too valuable with how versatile he is. If he is healthy by the end of spring, he's probably going to be in the lineup on opening day. Harrison Bader made his first start on Tuesday, flew out in his 1 at-bat, played 4 innings in center field. It was the first time that we saw the Bader, Marte, Nimmo outfield. Speaking of media appearances, Carlos Mendoza went on a podcast with John Heyman and Joel Sherman, their show for the Post, and he was very high on that outfield. Obviously, he's only going to speak good things about his team, but he did seem to perk up a little bit talking about what he views as 3 center fielders out there in Marte, Bader, and Nimmo. I really do think that's sort of the backbone of what David Stearns is trying to do with this team here. That outfield defense is clearly an area where they're trying to sort of manipulate the game and find some money ball, if you will. Try to prevent some runs. Guys like Megill, Hauser, Quintana, everybody outside of Severino, really. Against Manaea, you're hoping for some strikeouts this year. But for the most part, it's a lot of guys who are going to pitch to contact. And seeing that group of 3 out there in the outfield, it's an exciting first step for this team as they're trying to round into form before opening day. Hopefully all 3 of those guys can stay healthy and have big years. I mean, Harrison Bader, like I said, he was on the Foul Territory show as well. And, he is very confident, which I think is just his personality in general. But he had a core muscle surgery to try to clean up some of the issues that he's had when it comes to his health the last couple of years. and he seems to be reared up and ready to go. It's interesting that he's playing less than a lot of these guys. Um, you hear Brandon Nimmo talking on the podcast as well. He was really kind of going into how the Mets evaluate workload. So I just wonder if that's a matter of trying to keep Bader's workload low right now as they're easing him into things. But it seems like he is going to be healthy for the start of the season, and a healthy Harrison Bader could be a lightning rod. Defensively, it's going to be huge, but I do think he can outperform the projections on what his offensive value is going to be. It's one of those spots where it can go either way, but I think there is a chance that he can be a little bit better than expected. And for $10.5 million, I'm sure the Mets are hoping for and counting on that. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Appreciate all of you who tuned in. If you were listening on the audio side, make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast so you don't miss any shows. If you're watching on YouTube, I want to thank you all. We had a goal of 8,000 subs by opening day. We hit that. I don't know if we can get to 8,500 by opening day now and push that envelope a little bit further, but we're going to try. So I appreciate all of you who are hitting that subscribe button and continue to follow everything we're doing with the show. If you want to follow me on social, you can do so at Finkelstein Ryan on X. You can follow the show at Locked On Mets. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find that link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day and your first watch. After your second watch, head over to YouTube and find the Locked On Sports Today channel, which is the first ever 24/7 show covering everything in the world of sports with our local experts from each team and our league-wide experts from each league. You find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.